These two microphones are frighteningly similar, even from the perspective of sound. But then, if that is the case, why is there such a massive gap in price between them? Well, let's take a look under the hood. The Beta 58 doesn't have as storied of a past as the SM58, only being released in 1989. That said, there's still 30 years under its belt, and honestly, this thing has seen changes. It was originally released just as the Beta 58. It came in two versions, the Beta 58M or the Beta 58C, the difference being just the finish on the grill. It's mostly aesthetics. Then in 1996, they retooled the microphone and rebranded it the Beta 58A. Now they completely reworked the capsule, keeping the polar pattern and all the other bells and whistles like the frequency response. But nothing else. They removed the humbucking coil, they added an output transformer for good measure, just like the SM58. The biggest tweak of them all, though, is the new neodymium magnet, which boosted the signal a bit more than the SM58, which makes a good segue into build quality. Now, this thing, much like every other Shure mic, is built like an absolute tank. Now, the screen on the head is actually higher quality than the SM58, and don't get me wrong, the SM58 is legendary for its ruggedness, if that tells you anything. It has a slightly powdered blue look to it, and it just seems to feel just a bit more premium. Kind of like a step up from the SM58, if there is such a thing. And of course, the blue ring around the head, which is what a lot of musicians, Dylan included, look for. Now, the shock mount is supposed to be a bit better than the SM58 as well. I guess we'll see when we put them side by side for that test. And the weight on it, which is kind of confusing, but it's a bit lighter than the SM58, which is interesting considering all the extra engineering in the grill head. You'd think that it'd be at least comparable. That aside, though, let's dig into the specs a bit. This microphone is a supercardioid.
Supercardioid!
Guy's annoying. The frequency response is 50 Hz to 16 kHz. The output impedance is 150 ohms. And that's pretty much it. There's one big thing I should point out with this microphone, though, and that is the frequency response chart. The way this thing battles the proximity effect is, well, by just getting rid of all the low-end frequencies. Literally rolled them all off around 300 Hz. And compared to the SM58, that rolls off at about 100 Hz, this is quite the difference. So when we do the proximity effect test, we're going to include both microphones so you can see the difference. This is the off-axis rejection of the Shure Beta 58A. This is me speaking about 4 inches away from the capsule. This is me speaking about 4 inches away from the side of the capsule. This is me speaking about 4 inches away from the rear of the capsule. And this is me speaking into the perceived dead zone at about, I'd say 35 degrees from the back of the capsule. Now this is the off-axis rejection for the SM58. This is me speaking about 4 inches from the front of the capsule. This is me speaking about 4 inches from the side of the capsule. This is me speaking about 4 inches from the rear of the capsule. And this is me speaking into what would be the dead zone on the Shure Beta 58A. Not quite so dead from this angle, is it? Now we have a plosive test comparing the Beta 58A to the SM58. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Now for a handling noise test comparing the Beta 58A to the SM58. And now for the handling noise of the SM58. And now for the proximity effect test of the Beta 58A. This is me speaking into the front of the Beta 58A from about 4 inches away. Now this is me speaking about 1 inch away from the Beta 58A. 4 inches, 1 inch. 4 inches, 1 inch. Now for a proximity effect test of the Shure SM58. This is me speaking about 4 inches away from the front of the SM58. This is me speaking about 1 inch away from the front of the SM58. 4 inches away, 1 inch away. 4 inches away, 1 inch away. Now we have both the Shure Beta 58A and the Shure SM58 side by side. And I'm going to swap in between the Beta 58 and the Shure SM58, so you can kind of see the differences sonically between the two microphones. Which one do you prefer? Now, this is a much more expensive microphone. I'll put the prices up here so you can see the difference. From just a sound perspective, this one is going to be a little flatter in the lows because of that roll-off. This one's going to have a little bit more of that presence in the low end. But of course, when you get in really tight to the microphone, this is going to be the difference between the two of them. So what do you think? The Beta 58A or the Shure SM58? That's kind of one of those things that you have to take into consideration when buying one of these microphones. Are you a close talker? Are you one of those guys that has the microphone right in your mouth? That bass roll-off might come in handy. However, you can do the same thing with a bass roll-off with an EQ. So, it kind of depends on which one you like. So, with all that said, we're done the test of the Beta 58A versus the SM58. Which one do you like? Let me know down in the comments. This one is interesting. I'm sure I'm going to get several people saying they couldn't hear the difference, so why bother? Well, for a few reasons. The handling noise, it's a big one. Now, if you're a stage professional and you're known as a handheld guy, that lack of noise is a welcome addition to your show. There's nothing worse than feedback from just moving the microphone around in your hands. Also, the polar pattern is a big bonus, as it takes away that annoying feedback from the stage monitors. And for those things alone, yeah, the price is justified. Now, the proximity effect control is pretty awesome, and really becomes apparent when you're right up on the grill of this thing. And the controlled presence boost will make sure this thing cuts through the music. As for the audio quality, it's just Shure. It's hard not to love. Less gain is never a bad thing, and honestly, you can hear why it's a Shure product when you place it up against other handhelds. So, if you're a singer, screamer, or frankly anyone that wants that amazing Shure experience on stage, this is the microphone for you. But should you buy it over the SM58? Well, sure, if you can afford it. It offers everything that the SM58 offers, and just a few extra amazing features that you will notice the difference, and you'll probably love it. Now, if you can't afford it, I wouldn't fret too much. I mean, if you're buying 2 or 3 of these for your band, it might get a bit pricey. Though if you can afford at least one for your lead singer, I would say that this might be a worthwhile investment for you to save up for. Thanks for watching. What did you think of the Beta 58A? Let me know down in the comments. Of course, as always, if you liked the video, there's a button for that. And if you loved it, there's another button for that. Cheers. And I'll see you in the next video. It is super hot here. Don't mind me. God, I gotta cool off. God, it's so hot.